Dungeons & Dragons is more popular than ever. To many folks out there, tabletop RPGs and D&D are synonymous. If you're sitting around a table creating a shared story with friends, you must be playing D&D. But maybe you've been playing D&D for years, or you've been looking at the hobby and wondering, is this all there is? Aren't there more games like this? Well, my little goblins, there are. Honestly, more than I think I could possibly cover in a single video. But how about we take 10 minutes to cover the 10 I'm most familiar with, and together we'll figure out which RPG is right for you. Hold that timer! Real quick, before we start, I want this to be a fairly short video, so with each system I bring up, I'm only going to be referring to the most recent editions. I'll do videos that go more in depth on each system and their various editions some other time. Maybe. Dungeons & Dragons! Yeah, I know, but we gotta cover the basics. Dungeons & Dragons is the granddad of ttRPGs. It's high fantasy, which means magic, elves, and incredible adventures into fantastical lands. D&D, pick your acronym, is currently in its 5th edition, and much more approachable than it used to be. Back, demon! It's kind of the gold standard for what's called the D20 system, which centers around the idea that when you need to determine if you succeed or fail at something, you roll a 20-sided die. You get to add on modifiers your specific character might have that represent their particular strengths and weaknesses, and that roll is compared against a number called a DC, or difficulty check. Other dice are used to determine damage, effects, yada. It can feel a little daunting, and there are quite a few rules to learn, but with their online character creator on D&D Beyond, it's oddly easy to get started, and no wonder why this system has become so popular. Pathfinder! Pathfinder started out as basically an update to the 3rd and a half edition of Dungeons & Dragons, but not written by the same people. Basically, it tried to bring better understanding, balance, and complexity to the rules of D&D. Dungeons & Dragons for the elite, the best of the best! Really, think of it as Dungeons & Dragons with more detailed rules, more character customization, and more combat options. So it's better than D&D, right? If that sounds better than D&D to you, then yes. If not, then no. For a lot of folks who just wished D&D had more depth, Pathfinder has been a godsend, but a lot of people don't want to deal with making what is their fun, relaxing pastime more complex. Chronicles of Darkness. Chronicles of Darkness, or New World of Darkness, we'll cover that in another video, is a modern Gothic RPG. The core book of this game, The Chronicles of Darkness, has you playing as humans who learn about this hidden supernatural underworld. Each additional core book has you playing as any number of supernatural beings, vampires, werewolves, bio-robots created by the overlapping reality of the God Machine, all beings that have to deal with some struggle of balancing their humanity with their monstrality. In this game, the only dice you ever roll are 10-sided, and basically your stats determine how many of those dice you'll ever roll at a time. An 8 to a 10 is a success, and the more successes, the better you do. If you are a longtime D&D player, this system might seem a little weird, but I promise it is strangely easy and satisfying. The one thing I will warn against is it's kind of discouraged to play mixed monster games, as their abilities and power levels don't really match up. CYPHER system. Let's get back to the warmth and safety of the D20. In fact, let's rarely use any other dice and not let the Game Master ever roll dice, that jerk! The CYPHER system started as Numenera, a game that takes place so far in the future that is basically high fantasy but with more robots. Born from that, the CYPHER system exists and can be used in basically any setting. Fantasy, horror, modern, sci-fi, superheroes, alternate history, it does it all, baby! The system is not unlike D&D, where to see if you succeed at something you roll a d20, but to change it up, only the players ever roll, and they almost never add anything to that roll. The Game Master simply sets a difficulty from 1 to 10, you times that difficulty by 3, and you just need to hit that number or higher. So to stab an enemy that is difficulty level 7, you would need a 21? But through the power of skills, items, and just trying real hard. Instead of adding to the roll, you adjust the difficulty, maybe turning that 7 into a 4. I know, why do that instead of adding modifiers, blah blah blah. Trust me, it makes sense, I just don't have time right now. Also, you only have 3 main attributes, which also double as your health and as pools of points for your abilities. This maybe sounds complicated. However, it's one of those systems that's oddly simple to learn but has a lot of depth. Fate. Say hello to Fate, an RPG that literally has all its rules available for free online. Like CYPHER, Fate can be used for pretty much any setting. Unlike CYPHER, there are no d20s. This system is all the standard, everybody has a few lying around somewhere, d6s. Just 4 of them to be precise. Your character is composed of a descriptive sentence, some concepts that define them as a person, and skills that are ranked from +1 to +5. That's just about it, with some optional rules depending on the setting. When you want to do an action, you roll the 4 dice. 1 to 2 counts as a -1, 3 to 4 counts as 0, 5 to 6 counts as a +1. Add the relevant skill rank, and you've got your result. There's obviously more to this system with how damage and combat works, but for the most part, it really is that easy. Fate is what we in the biz like to call rules light, but with a Z. Yeah. This is a story-focused game that is all about creative descriptions. Heck, if your group isn't too into combat, you can literally decide an entire encounter with one roll, and if you fail, you still might beat the baddies, you'll just take some damage or stress. This game is for you goblins who want to tell a story together and just want the rules to help as guidelines, but don't want them getting in the way. Castle FALKENSTEIN. Screw dice! Oh my god, no, I'm sorry, please, it was a joke! Dice are great, but maybe if you want a break from them, try Castle FALKENSTEIN, a game that looks suspiciously like Fate in how its skills are laid out, but instead of rolling dice, the Game Master deals everyone 4 cards and you use those to give bonuses to your skills. In some ways, this is actually really great because it replaces some of the randomness of dice rolls with the strategy of deciding when might be the most beneficial time to use certain cards. Castle FALKENSTEIN does have a single setting, that being steampunk Victorian England with magic, with a K if I remember correct. It is definitely a fun setting, but it would be easy to utilize its rules to pretty much any setting you want. FIASCO. We've done away with a lot of the complicated rules, gotten rid of dice. Heck, let's get rid of game masters and just have players! Some folks might be a little upset with me daring to put FIASCO in the same video as these other systems, as it's definitely a different kind of role-playing game, but I still think it's worth mentioning. FIASCO is a masterless system that is pretty much 100% just about collaborative storytelling. You all choose a setup to a story, the book comes with a number, but you could absolutely come up with your own, which is typically modern day, but it doesn't have to be. Then you come up with connections between yourself and the other players. You use these connections to figure out who your characters are as part of playing the game. Then you all take turns acting out scenes, deciding who came out on top of those scenes, awarding dice, and at the end that helps determine who kind of wins. It's all about improv RPing with each other and just trying to come up with the most twisted, interesting story you can tell. I believe the game describes it as like the tabletop RPG version of a Coen Brothers movie. Seriously, can't recommend this highly enough, even if you just use it as a backup game for when Gary frickin' bails on your D&D session that night and you'll still want to play something, because FIASCO requires literally no beforehand prep. Mutants and Masterminds. Okay, too much new stuff. I need the comfort of the D20 system again, or at least something D20 system adjacent, and full of spandex. Eminem, no, not that one. Nope, not that one. No, not him either. There you go. Is a superhero ttRPG. If you're familiar with D&D, there's a lot here that's going to be pretty easy to understand. Attributes, the basic combat structure, yeah. Only now you have power points to buy superpowers and stuff with. You can fly, run super fast, turn into a million bugs, go wild. There are plenty of alternate rules like how damage works, but they are pretty easy to get the hang of if you know D20. Shadowrun. Yeah, cyberpunk is more in the cultural zeitgeist right now, but does it have magic? Nope. And have I played it? Also no. Shadowrun is a fantasy cyberpunk RPG that takes place in the not-too-distant future. Magic has returned to our world, changed some people into elves and orcs, others into freaking monsters, and also technology and corporations make life crap for most people. You know, the usual. Shadowrun focuses a lot on you doing criminal jobs against corporations in a system that has you rolling d6s and using 5s and 6s as successes. The more points you have in a skill, the more dice you roll, so it's the d6 version of World of Darkness's d10s. I haven't played a ton of this, but I will say, being all the technology, cyber hacking, magic, and everything else, the system can be a little complicated to learn. But if you like the setting, this system gives it a ton of satisfying depth. Totally worth checking out if you can get past the learning curve. No thank you, evil. This last one isn't going to be for a lot of you, but I'm still going to talk about it. No Thank You Evil is from Monty Cook Games, the same folks who did CYPHER, and functions kind of like a super simplified version of that. This is because, if you can't tell already, it's designed for children ages 5 and up. A question I see posted by a ton of D&D moms, dads, uncles, and aunts is when can you start getting those littlest goblins into RPGs? Even the simpler systems I've listed here can be a little much for 5 to 8-year-olds, so this system is designed to be easy to understand and hold their attention. It's a perfect gateway drug to get them addicted. So, there you go, 10 RPGs, with time to spare. Not every one is for everyone, but they all offer something different, and as a 20-plus year vet of tabletop RPGs, I give you my word that if one of them sounds interesting to you, it is worth your time. Also, don't forget to check out my Patreon, where I post maps, interact with folks, and post polls on what topics I should tackle next. Follow my Twitch if you want to watch me design RPG stuff or just play video games, and watch me review movies and make food on my other channel, MoJoMenace.